Hi everybody, it's the 6th of February 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. I hope you're doing well today. We got lots to cover. On nuclear and Fukushima in particular tonight. Where it always takes us a few moments to get up to speed. My apologies. This is from Hanford back in the day. And these are what they call glove boxes. They're 3 feet thick windows of lead. And they like using women because back in those days, because women didn't know very much about this technology. And they were considered disposable. I'll remind everybody that in the preamble to these shows, if you comment in the comment section before the show starts, Google tendency to remove the comments after about 3 hours, 4 hours maybe. And that's a big problem I've seen over the last number of years. And so it's not me, it's Google does that. Fukushima planned to go on for 10,000 years. And that's more than enough time. Oh, hang on 1 second, I'll show you what I'm up to. I'm at the video we're on right now. I gotta scroll down and activate, because Google turns it off when I go live, the embedding. So if any sites had this video embedded, it wouldn't play until I do that. And we also, as you probably know by now, got a merchandise shop set up. And that was an incredible struggle for me to get up and running. But so to save the whales, and so to save the whales, ban nuclear power. Now most of these shirts will come in multiple colors. And if you let it load up for a second, then it'll give you access to this enlargement. To save the whales, ban nuclear power plants. Now you notice my name is not on these t-shirts. And the nuclear proctologist, or Dana Durnford, is not on that t-shirt. It's just a very bare shirt to get rid of any controversies, distractions, what I mean by that. And just that one subject. And anybody, you got pillows, wall art, even bedding, and I'm still struggling with some of this, but to give you a concept of what I mean, that's a sheet, so that's a full-size picture on a blanket. So it's a huge, huge blanket. Unfortunately, I'm still learning. So there's women's t-shirts. We got lots and lots of women's t-shirts. Fukushima nuclear meltdown is a extinction level event shirts, and Fukushima threatens mass extinction around the world. And sometimes you got pictures on the back, sometimes you got letters on the back. Save the planet from climate change. Banned nuclear power plants. And again, that's not a good example because that's only in white and black. But the majority of these, you're supposed to have multiple color options. And it's going to make a lawyer out of me again. But anyway, you get the picture, right? So we got lots and lots of, here we go. Save the insects, ban nuclear power plants, and we'll jump back into the story. Is now active. We've sold one sweatshirt so far, and I don't know who's buying anything. This is not my site. Everything comes with a guarantee from the site, and the prices are plus shipping, unfortunately. And then I get a chunk of the pie. They do all the shipping. They handle all the other stuff. This site's been around doing this for a very long time, until I come up with a better solution where I can just ship it myself. But anyway, that's so save the insects, ban nuclear power plants. You can see the NOAA's America model of radioactive fallout, and some headlines: deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. And so it's meant to get in your face with a conversation, because if you say something, it doesn't mean much to somebody. But if you come in with one of these on your faces, say for instance, then you got a conversation. Close all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms. And I got a whole folder of stuff I need to use to make up these shirts and stuff like that. And stop the omnicide. COVID cover for Fukushima plume face mask. That's a perfect face mask to be wearing if you want to start up a racket. COVID-19, the cover story for Fukushima doomsday radioactive plume. And so you can find all kinds of stuff up and just hover over kids in long sleeve t-shirts, pants and everything else. And this is going to grow exponentially amount of material. And I'm starting to get good at it because I've been at this for about 4 days. The site didn't go live until today. But these backpacks too are huge, because a lot of people use these backpacks, right? Especially if you're got a lot of co-workers and you got to stand in line all the time or something. You got your backpack around buses or subways. That's meant to get the conversation going. It's long overdue, obviously, right? Let's jump into it. But obviously I got to plug the new site because it just got up today. But I'll refer to it hopefully every video at the end of each video and remind people that's a great way to get a conversation started. You know what I mean? Let's jump into it. I'm going to walk you across Japan. And we got a poll tonight. Also, is the hateful nuclear industry out of control? And what I mean by is the hateful nuclear industry, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, its entire existence is predicated upon lies and deception. We've never caught it telling the truth a single time. Work at Fukushima. Now I'm going to build you a quick picture of radioactive fallout in Japan and worldwide. We got a bunch of Fukushima stories to cover. And let's get after it here. New York Times, TEPCO has worked vigilantly to shut out close scrutiny of the ravaged Fukushima plant conditions. Japanese radiation expert, my results show contamination is spread all over the country. And think about this headline here, radioactive substances, radioactive fallout from Fukushima belongs to the landowner, not us. And first off, they generally refuse to acknowledge there's radioactive fallout. But here you got them in the major Japanese paper, Plug Inform. Japan boss states that TEPCO is not liable for the nuclear damage. Japan must be the only place in the world with several million becquerels of radioactive isotopes in urban areas. It's an absurd to have humans living in that environment. So, before we jump in, it's 300 times more radiation released into the atmosphere from burning radioactive debris than claimed by the government. So they're grounding up contaminated material in northern Japan prefectures, 14 prefectures, and taking it to incinerators all over the country and burning it. Instead of storing it, they're burning it and liberating the radiation back into the environment to kill all the species in humanity. There really isn't anything more important than what's going on in Japan and how they're doing everything the complete wrong way, the opposite. Imagine if Iran was doing this or North Korea was doing this. You might appreciate the severity of how much danger we're in, how late it is, and how far down the hole we actually are already. Fukushima Prefecture, 1.4 million atomic decays every second, detected in worms' feces and worm excreta non-stop, 60 kilometers from the nuclear meltdowns. This is just absurdness. This is absurd. It makes Chernobyl look irrelevant, and Chernobyl was brutal. But it makes Chernobyl look irrelevant when you start appreciating what's really going on. So I'm going to take you from 75 miles away from the nuclear meltdown, quickly all the way to 1,000 miles away from the nuclear meltdown, so you can appreciate how much radiation fallout. And when most of these numbers are just a single isotope, and you're talking about there's 1,000 different fission products are going to be in the same sample, but they're generally only going to acknowledge, for the most of it, is a gamma emitters. They're not going to acknowledge alpha, betas, and neutrons. They will, randomly, but majority of these are just going to be gammas. So 75 miles away, 500,000 becquerels a kilogram. By the way, it's multiplied by 68 to get a square meter. It's just absurd numbers now you're talking about. You're talking about 30 million becquerels a square meter, the size of your kitchen table. And 55 per square meter is considered an evacuation zone at nuclear power plants. 4 million becquerels in a major city and didn't come from the iodine or the cesium. In neutron rays measured in Tokyo, uranium-235 in Chiba, and uranium-235 can get hit by neutrons and split. And then it does the same thing. Each of them create 3 neutrons, and they split uranium-235. Each of them, right, all of a sudden, that's a chain reaction where it exponentially starts multiplying perpetually. Was going on in that headline is what they were actually alluding to. 4 million becquerels a square meter of cesium, which is gamma, in the school in Chiba, which is 20 kilometers from Tokyo. These are bizarre numbers. These are forever numbers. They're not, and radiation just doesn't fall into one spot. You're talking about all of Japan, as you'll see. Another one, because that was cesium. Yeah, that was cesium. This is xenon-133 at 400,000 times what's considered normal. And xenon-133 levels in Chiba and actual figures may be much higher. These are catastrophic. You're supposed to evacuate all animals and humans from these environments permanently till the end of time. And then in Tokyo, just the fog, when you captured a kilogram of it, was 4,000 becquerels a kilogram of just gamma, not counting alpha, neutrons, betas. Another sample after rainfall in Tokyo, 220 kilometers away from the nuclear meltdowns, at 30 million becquerels almost in the soil per square meter. So if you include gamma and alpha and beta, you're looking at hundreds of millions of atomic decays every second per square meter in Tokyo. This is absurd numbers. 170,000 becquerels a kilogram in the sewage. And this is from the slag. They burnt the sewage, incinerated the sewage, and the ashes left over are 170,000 becquerels. And the official story was that the radiation doesn't float away, it ends up in the ash. Like, mental retardation is the closest you can describe these people that are talking about this stuff. But they understand the population doesn't understand radiation, so they say stuff, the media regurgitates it, and it becomes folklore forever after. But in reality, you're talking about humans were excreting 1 million becquerels a kilogram or something. This is absurd numbers. 18 million becquerels a square meter in Tokyo, 220 miles away. The air samples in Tokyo were 270 times more contaminated with just gamma they're emitting to it than global weapons fallout. You're supposed to evacuate 36 million people permanently from Tokyo. Japan, and they recognized that instead of evacuating people, they were going to evacuate themselves 300 miles away, west, of course. Strontium-90 found 245 kilometers way past Tokyo, heading south now towards Hiroshima, Nagasaki. 150 times the background of strontium-90, a bone sinker. This is a terrible isotope. Intelligence agency pressures researchers to withhold info on the spread of Fukushima radiation. So they're intelligence agencies, but they're mass murderers. That's how you destroy a country. You don't have a radiation system set up in your country so you can ignore it. You got it there so you can do the right moral and ethical thing. And the industry will never let you do that. They're never going to let anybody on the planet do that, because then the world wakes up and realizes these are not humans, these are actually monsters. High levels of strontium-90 detected 250 kilometers from the nuclear meltdowns. So we're marching south 250 kilometers from the meltdowns, past Tokyo, west of Tokyo, 24,000 becquerels a kilogram, multiplied by 68 to get a square meter. Iodine 131 levels rise 350 kilometers from Fukushima at sewage plants. And sewage excrement, right? So it's a short-lived isotope, and if you're finding high numbers in 2012, it meant you got an ongoing chain reaction creating these isotopes. It's a perpetual radioactive fallout confirmation. Fukushima radioactivity of 40 billion becquerels a kilogram. Large black puddles of fallout along the roadside. 40 billion becquerels a kilogram is, if your Geiger counter says 40 billion becquerels, you're supposed to just drop the Geiger counter and run away screaming, never come back. Hot particles, 400 kilometers, with a radioactivity of 40 billion becquerels a kilogram. Hot spots are spreading because they're burning radioactive debris throughout the country on top of that. Government check radiation, 460 kilometers. 600 kilometers in Osaka. We got lots and lots of, we got a full folder on Osaka radiation. 900 kilometers and even 1,000 kilometers, high levels of radioactive material. And Professor, it's true, about 70% of Japan's territory is polluted. Experts warn about catastrophic impact on the health. To your left is what 55 countries had banned 14 prefectures, the farm products. And you've got to ban everything. You can't just ban half the country when it looks like that. the right thing to do the whole country. And you should ban it anyway. You should never buy it. They're growing food right alongside of the bags of radiation. Like, it just defies... And this is from a major media newspaper complaining because the farmers were being stigmatized for growing in a nuclear wasteland. And the newspaper was actually complaining that farmers were being criticized. Okay, so Fukushima governor refutes ex-prime ministers. Five ex-prime ministers wrote a letter to the European Union recently and warned them not to use nuclear as a green taxonomy. And then a governor who spent originally, he never slept for 72 hours when the accident happened. He was in TV for 72 hours straight, claiming there was no radiation releases. The governor of Fukushima, Uchibori, is now the governor of Fukushima Prefecture. And to describe him as evil really doesn't do him justice. It really doesn't. He's one of the most evilest people in human history. It's hard, like Pol Pot, Mao, really don't touch the carnage that he has instituted worldwide by shipping food worldwide from nuclear meltdowns. Uchibori sent a written protest to 5 former Japanese prime ministers. A lowly governor criticized 5 prime ministers for saying that many children in the prefectures are suffering from thyroid cancer as a result of the 2011 nuclear meltdowns. They don't even have the common sense to acknowledge how bad this is. They just call it a nuclear accident. And thyroid cancer, so what happens is, you see all those numbers I showed you? You're breathing it, drinking it, bathing in it, cooking in it, washing in it, and you're absorbing it, incredible doses all the time. And what that means, though, is your thyroid takes a lot of this radiation. The gamma emitters in particular will end up in the thyroid glands. That mutates them into radioactive hormones because they act like normal emitters in one sense, not emitters, but normal elements from the solar system. And the man-made isotopes and the atoms end up in the thyroid. Thyroid mutates it into a radioactive hormone where that destroys many body functions. Governor, so it's not just cancer, it's catastrophic illnesses. Governor Uchibori has taken issue with a letter the ex-leader sent to the European Union last month, calling on the bloc to pursue a nuclear-free society. Now, he doesn't give a shit about the EU. He's worried about the reputation damage to the nuclear wasteland, poisoning people worldwide. He wrote to the leaders on Wednesday saying they should present objective information based on scientific evidence, like I supplied to you before we got to this story, by the way, is the best of the best you're ever going to hear. The letter dated January the 27th, so really recently, was a reaction to the EU plan to label some nuclear power plants as green investments. Kazumi, one of the former prime ministers of Japan, is an advisor to a private organization that promotes zero nuclear power and renewable energy. And the letter refers to the accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, the multiple nuclear meltdowns of massive reactors. The leaders said what we have witnessed in Fukushima over the last decade is an indescribable tragedy and contamination on an unprecedented scale. When 55 countries banned food from 14 prefectures, half your country, your country is ruined. That's the definition of a ruined country. They add, many children are suffering from thyroid cancer. Now, you got to realize this is Japanese media. The survey found 266 cases of confirmed or suspected thyroid cancers. But a panel of experts commissioned by the prefectures say no links have been established and so far between the thyroid cancer and radiation exposure. But they don't give you another alternative for what caused the illnesses. But the actual study is 5.8%. It's not 266. It was 13,646. It used to be 1 to 2 per million. It's 13,646 out of 40,000. Which we scale that up, it's going to be 358,000 out of a million. So 358,000 out of a million is significantly more than 266. Like, all of these tumors didn't go away, okay? They metastasized. A panel of experts commissioned by the prefecture says there's no link. Now, I showed you unequivocally earlier, and that country was buried in radiation. In the complaints to the ex-leaders, Governor Uchibori says providing accurate information based on scientific knowledge is crucial for the rebuilding of a nuclear wasteland. You can't rebuild Fukushima with the truth. You can only moderately rebuild Fukushima with deception and deceit and dishonesty, which is what the Japanese has taken. Here's that when they refer to the current state of the prefecture, they should use objective information instead of facts. That is based on the prefecture's views instead of the actual numbers. And reports by international scientific organizations, because Japan is too stupid to figure things out themselves, obviously. Speaking at a diet committee, which is the equivalent of a parliament or a senate, on Wednesday, Japan Prime Minister Kishida Fumio called a letter by his predecessors inappropriate. Really, 5 former prime ministers of the country don't have a right to tell the truth, is what he's saying. Kishida said the letter spreads incorrect information, really. The children in Fukushima are suffering health damage from radiation. And how could they not be? How does that actually work? I'll show you some of this coming up after this one here. He said it also raised concern of promoting unreasonable discrimination and prejudice. No, he doesn't want the world to realize these are genocidal murderers. These are cowards. These are strawmen. These are monsters and demons. In fact, think of what Ozawa had said. We may not be able to live in Japan someday because of radiation. In 2012, Japan's National Cancer Society says the number of patients rose by 865,000 extra cases a year later. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested have diabetes. The head of the Tokyo area medical clinic said we are expecting diabetes in children from the Fukushima radiation. And comparison with x-rays and CAT scans are meaningless. Inhaling particles increases radiation exposure by a factor of a trillion. Right, because man-made radiation is 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So 13,646 out of 40,000. Pre-Fukushima numbers were 1 in a million.
でまさに今そこに元気な人が死んでいくんだよね。
But there's clear evidence rates have risen. Before the disaster in 2011, the rate of thyroid cancer was between 1 and 2 cases in every million children.
To 1 and 2 cases in every million. Now it's 358,000 out of a million. In fact, congenital heart disease operations rose 14% after Fukushima. This is absurd numbers, by the way, because you're talking about per 100,000, 14.2%. So 14,200 children need open heart surgery. That's what they're talking about in a 2019 study. They've seen that after Chernobyl, too. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rates now nearly double the Japanese average in 2015. Excessive weight gain after a nuclear accident is a marker of radiation poisoning to the brain. Pneumonia cases surge in Japan's Tohoku regions, and frequencies of pneumonia also increased after Chernobyl. And coronavirus, which is the cover story for Fukushima radioactive fallout worldwide. Japan Times column, as the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time, the truth will come out about Fukushima. 1,500 atoms of sulfur, the radioactive sulfur peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs per cubic meter was detected in the California air. Another study, independent study, showed 360 plus atoms of radioactive sulfur per day may have been inhaled in the Californians after Fukushima each day. And so this is true for animals, insects, birds, etc., etc. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan. People should stay home and immediately take off their clothes and cleanse the nuclear contaminants. Radioactive rain also caused 130 schools in Korea to close. Hot radioactive particles in Seattle at 50% of the levels seen in Tokyo. These are catastrophic numbers for all species. Radiation data from Seattle area survey may be withheld by the feds for national security reasons. Because 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the organs. And that children with over 11 becquerels a kilogram in cesium start to see heart problems. And at 50 becquerels a kilogram in children, you will see irreversible heart damage. And cesium is also immediately damages the heart and muscles. It's not slow acting. And in one community, in a 30-day period, they've seen 12,700 people die of heart attacks compared to any other year. An excess almost 13,000 people died of heart attacks in a single month, extra compared to any other year. Fukushima Unit 1 and 2 exhaust stacks, not the reactors, but quite a long ways away from the reactors. Just the exhaust stacks are lethal doses at 10 sieverts per hour. Fukushima 311 tape, time to make a geezer, older person's suicide squad, but they use a derogatory term as a geezer. It shows this incredible sign of contempt. TEPCO, send us people who don't mind dying. Vice Governor suggested a Fukushima draft. All of Japan must face it, like a war draft, a Fukushima draft. The Finance Minister, Japan should let the elderly hurry up and die. Because they built the country by working hard. They don't have a right to live now. It's a despicable society. Concern half of Japan to be covered in nuclear waste. 60 and older should be prepared to die at the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. 60 and older should be prepared to die at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear meltdown. U.S. government. Radioactive material from the reactors is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poisons. We had nothing but storm after rainstorm. Then we had incredible, brutal, freezing rain after about 36 hours of just endless downpour. Then that froze every branch on every plant and tree was a sheet of ice. Then we had torrential rains again for about 20 hours. And then late last night we started having snow, and it got to minus 20 wind chills, and it's now minus 20. So you had all this water come down on frozen ground and had nowhere to go, so you had flash floods. Then you had freezing rain. Then you had more torrential rain. But on the East Coast, you have 4 feet of frost in the ground, right? So the rain can't get soaked up by the ground, but it does pull up. And now we got minus almost 20 temperatures. So everything is frozen, and then you got 5 or 6 centimeters of snow on top of that. But it was heavy blowing snow. Just imagine if it was all freezing temperatures and all that rain was snow. We probably would have got 120 centimeters of snow. We would have got like 4 or 5 feet probably of snow, not counting drifts. So that was okay. So I've been working on the shop, and it's been a struggle trying to build the new merchandise shop. I got a long way to go, but it's up and running. But I'll be at this a lot. I got tons of ideas that we'll talk about later and over the next while, I'm sure. Move south of equator if Unit 4 fuel pool goes dry. Humanity's number one enemy, Arnie Gunnarsson. Move south of the equator if Unit 4 goes dry.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
So I put his video between the two fuel pools in the sketch of Reactor 4, which is to the left also. So he's saying if the fuel pool goes, you should move south of the equator, get out of the northern hemisphere. And to your left, you can clearly see Reactor 4 is gone. And here's mainstream media pretending also they're in the fuel pool.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
Fukushima plume model. So when you hear Gunnarsson say move south of the equator, it's because this is what happens if the fuel pool destroyed. And obviously the fuel pool is destroyed. Arnie lied to everybody. She lied to everybody. And producers and editors and videographers and everybody else. 1 million becquerels a square meter over the west coast, Fukushima plume. A study shown 20 million particles of radioactive fallout in the US and Canada. This is another model in your bottom right-hand corner. That's 19 hours. The radioactive fallout covers the whole planet. Another study, 220 million atoms of the iodine-129 per liter of rainfall. This model is from France. This model is a 16-day model, 16 days. And you can see in 16 days, the whole planet is covered in radioactive fallout, the entire planet. Radioactive xenon-133 in Washington was 450,000 times. My Geiger counter is 273 counts per minute. And so 450,000 times above detection levels and persisted for weeks. This is one of those models of the Xenon 133. These are staggering continuous plumes of radioactive fallout. Cesium remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. So they want you to think about the tanks. And that's, you need to watch the playlist of my tanks to get up to speed. The Pacific was covered from the surface to the ocean floor, acknowledged in May 2012. So reactor 4, the fuel pools were at the top of the building. There is no building left. There's a piece of it left, but that's not a building. Kids are falling victims to disinformation and conspiracy theories. What's the best way to fix that? Well, the nuclear industry loves to brainwash the children, right? Stanford University. So you go to Stanford University, it's supposed to be a higher learning, one of the better ones on the planet, right? It's the opposite. It's full of lobbyists. University researchers found that less than 20% of high schoolers seriously question claims in social media, like Facebook posts that said images of strange-looking flowers supposedly near the site of the nuclear power plant accident in Japan. They don't even call it Fukushima, where there's multiple nuclear meltdowns, proved dangerous radiation levels persisted in the area. So the Stanford University was calling radiation fallout a false claim. Disinformation campaigns often directly go after young users, steering them towards misleading content. Yeah, and here's a prime example of that right here.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the...
Because she's not in Unit 4, see? World Nuclear News marks their 15th anniversary. Now, they're disgusting people, the World Nuclear News Association. They're literally revolting, despicable monsters. IAEA supports China. IAEA is United Nations, which is 193 militaries that got together and created this cover story of being United Nations. After Hiroshima and Nagasaki, of course. And now they got the World Health Organization, the World Bank Organization, they got UNSCLEAR and ERPA, they got UNESCO, they got UNICEF, they got all these organizations meant to displace all other organizations and have them all ran by a military operation disguised as some glorified United Nations. They're just a corporation, and they're like McDonald's and everything else. They don't have no sovereignty over any country, but they put people in key positions in those countries, and that's how they've taken over our planet. They're now a direct threat to all life worldwide and future. The scumbags from United Nations is supporting China in its effort to protect the Winter Olympics against criminals or terrorist activities involving nuclear or other radioactive materials. This is revolting. So you can't have a sporting event now without worrying about dirty bombs, because these are the industries that create dirty bombs for the A-10 Warthog, for the Abrams tank. The A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs, but they're worried that you're going to get one of those munitions and wrap it in explosives and sets it off at the Olympics. That's a joke, by the way, right? The IAEA allows the military to use dirty bombs in their weapons all day. In total, the degenerate, monstrous, disgusting, despicable international agency has provided nuclear security support for 66 major public events in 42 countries since 2004. Well, where were they before that? To assist in the readiness to counteract a potential threat. This is incredible fear-mongering. We should have another organization that keeps the water safe, should we? Should we have another organization that keeps the air safe? Maybe we should create an organization to check all the athletes' excrement to make sure they're not dirty bombs. They lent hundreds of radiation detecting instruments for the game. Because they see people going around with these Geiger counters. They're told who they are and what they're doing. They're there to keep them safe from terrorists. This is lunatic stuff. You couldn't make this up if you wanted to. You couldn't sit there and be writing a book and say, well, we're going to create an organization that goes in and indoctrinates all the game's participants with a narrative that's simply not true. Included support for past Olympic Games hosted by Brazil, China, Greece, scumbag Japan, Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation summits in Chile, the Philippines, the World Youth Day in Panama, disgusting, and Poland, the African Cup national soccer tournaments in Cameroon, Egypt, Gabon, and the World's Expo in Kazakhstan. These are simply terrorists. That's what these people are. In the past 6 years, the terrorists, disguised as the International Atomic Energy Agency, has lent over 3,500 items of radiation detection equipment to countries across the world. This is just despicable. And the Olympics, of course, works hand in hand with the United Nations, the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex is United Nations. That's who the military-industrial complex is. The IA international scumbag known as International Atomic Energy Agencies helps the country to build nuclear security capabilities, boost personal brainwashing, greater and more visible levels of idiot security and useless surveillance, and the implementations of strong, stupid monitoring procedures at major public events go a long way to deter the criminal or terrorist acts. These are terrorists. They are 100% the terrorists on our planet, is the International Atomic Energy Agency. Collaboration with the terrorists, aka International Atomic Energy Agency, on nuclear security for the Beijing nuclear games. X-ray aprons market is expected to grow. First off, you're not supposed to use the X-ray aprons because the X-ray machines calibrate on their own. So when you put a belt on, it has to increase the dose it's going to give you to get a scan hidden behind the lead belt. I got no idea where that documentation is to off the top of my head for some reason. Maybe give me a second, I'll have a quick boot. It's kind of a tricky one because well, first off, I'm in the wrong spot. Hang on, just see if I can find it real quick. I found it yesterday and forgot to put it in a folder. I don't know where it's to off the top of my head. Just give me a second, let me scan to see if I can find it. And so yes, I don't know who bought, there it is. I don't know who bought the first object from my site. I don't have control over that facet of it. But that's a collector's item, trust me. Okay, so X-ray, that's scary that showed up. Lead aprons offer little protection during X-rays. Why do so many clinics keep using them? If you read that story, I'll bring it up for you. Another concern is that most imaging machines use radiation automatically to determine the dose of radiation required to produce a successful image. If the machine senses a shield, it increases the dose in an effort to image through the shield, leading to an increase in radiation exposures. And the aprons over part of your body to protect it from radiation, that's now an outdated practice. An American Association of Physicists in Medicine no longer support shielding patients' reproductive organs and fetuses. During imaging studies, they use radiation such as X-rays and CAT scans. Changing this practice has been nearly impossible feat. An association statement rocks the boat of conventions. It's based on mounting evidence that shielding is not as helpful as once thought, and it might even have negative consequences. And not only that, you get unstable X-rays or images and have to redo it. And another study found the shields were misplaced half of the time during pelvic X-rays and obscured important bony landmarks. So it was impossible to read the X-ray. And they even admit that prolonged exposures to X-rays have been linked to an increasing chance of developing cancer X-rays. An unborn child with 2 X-rays has a 70% chance of not being able to finish school and would have critical thinking skills deteriorated from it. Global Food Irradiation Services. How the hell are we going to stop them from radiating food, man? It's a despicable thing to do. Like, my goodness, the illnesses from that got to be staggering. Radioactive medical waste management. Australia is trying to build a deep geological repository for medical isotopes and excrement from the victims that were radiated and murdered. And so there's one of the t-shirts and face masks and stuff on my site is stop the cancer, or stop the chemotherapy cancer genocide, use DCA. It's a very important one. And I'll get the kinks out of that over the next while. And there'll really be some pretty... I'm going to start up another site if I can find one. I want a site that prints bumper stickers. If not, then I'm going to have to raise the money, start printing it and shipping it myself. Global cancer therapy market seeking excellent growth by 2027. Like, my goodness, right? These are monsters. There's a lot of money being a monster, unfortunately. Wait for it. So when you radiate some part of somebody's body, you can't do that. You got to radiate that whole section. And so if you kill one tumor, you're going to create 15 others. Hang on, I'll give you, hopefully. I'll give you some of that in a second, maybe. It's complicated. And so you can't rush these types of conversations. You gotta just take your time and tell the story, right? Hypoxia from chronic radiation-induced lung injuries, blood spinal cord barrier disruption, nervous system, radiation injuries, radiation-induced lung injuries, radiation-induced bowel injuries, radiation-induced intestinal injuries, radiation-induced kidney injuries, radiation-induced breast injuries, nervous system injuries from radiation, radiation injuries to the cranial nerves, radiation injuries to the head and neck. And that in chemotherapy, a study that was repeated in 2004, originally in 1995, showed that it was 2.3% survival rate of chemo in Australia and 2.1% in the United States, which is, it's better not to have anything done, obviously. Radiation-induced injuries to the visual pathways, injuries to the hearts, radiation heart attacks from breast cancer treatment, radiation-induced brain injuries, radiation-induced lung injuries, small bowels. The list just keeps going and going and going. Brain necrosis, and rectal injuries, spinal cord injuries, radiation injuries to the heart vessels, and radiation bowel, radiation. So you kind of get where I'm going, right? It's not cool at all, right? So you get what they call radiation treatment, and it destroys all your other organs, is the problem. And it's not like they don't know what's going on, it's they hate you. They hate your guts. Global cancer markets. Tiger bad, nuclear power plant good. This was actually a really good story. You can't own a tiger or a pet in West Virginia. The 2014 West Virginia legislators decided owning a tiger poses a threat to the community, so no tigers in your backyards. But soon you'll be able to have a nuclear power plant in your backyard. Presently, it's illegal to have a nuclear power plant in West Virginia because decades ago, the West Virginian lawmakers outlawed scumbag nuclear power plants. Nuclear power plants were outlawed because they're like tigers. They pose a threat to the community. The current legislation is in the process of legalizing nuclear plants in West Virginia. I guess nuclear plants no longer pose a threat to the community. If nuclear power is a cleaner alternative to coal and gas, maybe we should go that route. It seems safe enough if you ignore Chernobyl, Fukushima, Santa Susana, the Mayak. So I don't trust the government of West Virginia to adequately oversee a nuclear plant. One reason we have these disasters is because state laws often seem to protect the industry. And by protect the industry, I mean our legislators, Democrats, Republicans, has historically enacted laws that seemed designed so companies spend as little time and money on safety procedures and workers' protections as possible. And West Virginia's laws also tend to give state agencies diminishing authorities to inspect and oversee industrial sites, which is where corporations have human rights. You can't infringe on their human rights that they're not entitled to. They're like corporate personhood is what he's alluding to right there. Is where corporations have certain facets of human rights, where OSHA which is the Health and Safety Protection Agency in the United States, actually lost a court case because they tried to surprise inspect an abusive industry, and the industry sued OSHA and won $500,000, where normally a corporation is given a charter, is told how long they can exist, where they can exist, and if they become abusive or dangerous or commit crimes, they can be arrested. So there's an incentive not to be evil, right? And so they can be arrested and jailed. The company could be liquidated to pay restitution outstanding debt. But a corporate personhood, like Facebook, can't be arrested because they're the stock markets, for instance. So you can't arrest all the shareholders. So there's no incentive for them not to be evil. It's complicated, but it's not. So the same people who want to put more chemicals in your drinking water want to build a nuclear power plant. And Governor Jim Justice has been fined millions of dollars. The governor has been fined millions of dollars for mine safety violations at a coal mine he owns and operates. It seems like a lot of violations. Should someone with that record of disregard for industrial safety even be allowed to consider a bill that opens the door for the worst sort of industrial catastrophe? So to recap, you can't have a tiger because that poses a threat to the community, but you can have a radioactive nightmare. It's a good article, eh? It's worth reading. I can't quite do it justice. Keep the Diablo Canyon open. 79 scientists, academics, and entrepreneurs. So what they do is they got this, like, you know what I done at the beginning of the show? I marched you across Japan from Fukushima, right? So you kind of got overwhelming evidence. And what they do is they give you overwhelming bullshit. They give you 79 pro-nuclear scum degenerates and entrepreneurs, people who want to make money. And then they got lots of money to play with, right? To get attention. The media gives them all the attention that they want. And look at them with a small blimp to get their message down the main drag, which is illegal, by the way, to do what they're doing. The threat of climate change is real. It's too real and too pressing to leap before we look. Exactly. Here's climate change. It's radioactive fallout from the Fukushima reactors. This model is only based on 20 days. If you let the model run for another 20 days, it covers the rest of the planet, if it's an accurate model, right? It's from Fukushima. That plume is killing all the birds, all the animals, all the insects, all the mammals, and now the humans. It's disguised as the coronavirus when it comes to human tally. The letter reads, we are in a rush to decarbonize. Well, decarbonize is not going to stop what Fukushima done. You gotta denuclearize. You gotta get rid of all nuclear scientists. Put them in a big car crusher or something. Like, get rid of them. They got no right to exist. They're a plague on our planet like nuclear is. This model is only 16 days. This is from France government. So in less than 16, like the radiation didn't stop. The model stops at 16 days, but the radiation doesn't. See, how can I got the question is, how can nuclear exist if you see that? How can you sit there and let nuclear exist? It's so evil, it defies any kind of explanation. And hopefully we save the planet from the worsening effect of Fukushima radioactive fallout is what that's supposed to say. The letter is sent by a non-profit foundation, which is the pro-nuclear movement, Save Clean Energy, which is only about nuclear, which was organized primarily to protest the closure of nuclear power plants. So Save Clean Energy was probably Michael Schellenberg, the nuclear lobbyist, environmental progress subsidy, right? He's got a whole bunch of them now. One of them's in the UK, known as Xenon Light. Dr. James Hansen, probably one of the most evilest people that we see keep popping up besides Michael Schellenberg is James Hansen. If you look at what he done in his legacy, it's absolutely evil. It's incredibly, unbelievably evil, that feller. Oh, former CEO of Reddit. Scary when you see these people in such well-positioned. Save Clean Energy, which is a lobbying group for nuclear. It's unbelievable, right? And they got a former Secretary of Energy from Obama's Nobel laureate, like from Stanford. They got these major academics with significant accolades, and they got that because they're scumbags. There is no real organizations out there. There's just these fake ones to put real monsters on a pedestal. High levels of artificial radioactivity on glaciers. So this is such a bizarre story. They're blaming it on weapons fallout in Chernobyl. Refusing to acknowledge Fukushima even happened, or Santa Susana, or the Mayak, or all the nuclear dumping. Like, it's just a mini-Fukushima to better understand radioactive debris. So this was one of our old scumbags, Claire Corkhill, from Imperial College in London. And one of her cronies is no other... This is her here, Claire. You probably remember her if you've been around for a while, because we've curb stomped her probably 24 times over the years. And then the scumbags of scumbags, the real scumbag, this one, Jerry Thomas. She actually murders children with radiation for kicks. So Claire Corkhill, a mini-Fukushima, sort of like the Switzerland. Switzerland's teamed up with evilness in London, known as Jerry Thomas and Claire Corkhill. But Switzerland has also teamed up with the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, a notorious, evil, insidious, monstrous organization of the industry here in Canada. I was talking with a professor on the weekend who was quoted in an article, and I was trying to get her to do an interview because I also set up the Skype machine, got all the kinks out of that from what I can see. Everything is working, seems to be working good. And I wanted to get her to do an interview, and she didn't do an interview with that story. So she didn't know what the hell I was talking about. So I couldn't even get an interview done with her. But we are now going to try to start again, hopefully, to do interviews with the Skype machine. So if somebody wants me to interview them, you can text me or call me at 709-589-4406. Now, the weekend, I got a little list made of people I'm reaching out to see if I can do an interview. I prefer to do it on Skype, but I'll do it on phone. I don't give a shit as long as I can do the interview to start that process. But one of the problems we ran into, right, when we started this wanting to do interview was we couldn't get anybody to return our emails. I'm going to approach it differently this time. It just looks like I got censored, what it looks like to me. Scientists have reproduced in a laboratory a kind of mini-Fukushima. So this is meant to downplay Fukushima. And she equates United Kingdom, there's enough radiation waste in United Kingdom for everybody in the country to have a shopping bag full of radiation. What Claire doesn't tell you is for 30 years, United Kingdom loaded their radioactive waste. And by the way, this is terrifying. That if you'd done that, if you carried around a bag of nuclear waste, it would kill you within a few minutes of the waste we're talking about. But that's why she said shopping bag, because it seems harmless, right? The shopping bag scenario. But for 30 years, United Kingdom dumped their nuclear waste in the ocean. They just drove along, pushing barrels of it over the side. It's everywhere down there in the Atlantic Ocean. They also have Sellafield, which they show. Look at this. This is farms right alongside of a nuclear meltdown. And they're showing pictures of these farms. Or video. I'm doing screen captures. That's Sellafield, which is, it's got an ongoing nuclear meltdown with 8 million liters going into the ocean, with farms right up to the property of a nuclear meltdown. That's also making mixed oxide fuel there. So the emissions are ferocious amount of emissions. And as far as you can see in both directions, this place is surrounded by farms. We actually got T-shirts up at my new merchandise shop saying banned nuclear power plants around farms that are surrounded by farms, which means you got to get rid of 99% of all nuclear power plants on the planet because they love to poison you. So Claire Corkhill is an insidious monster. She's an actual monster. We've called her out at least 24 times. And the same thing with Jerry Thomas. Absolute monsters. We've called her out over 100 times. These are actual monsters. Japan 2021 farm export hits record high for the 9th year. But I only remember in the last 3 years of that. Actually, we've been covering this the whole time, but I only remember, I thought it was only like 3 years ago that they actually exceeded their pre-Fukushima numbers, which I'm probably right, I guess. It exceeded 1 trillion yen, 8.7 billion for the first times, backed by strong genocide online and retail sales as people spend more time home due to the Fukushima radioactive fallout disguised as a pandemic. Exports worth 1.24 trillion, up 25% from last year. Exports are up 25%. Getting a boost from a recovery in demand from dining out in China and United States. Because United States, the removal of restrictions placed by food imports from Japan and by the United States, European Union, other countries following the disaster also contributed to the growth. Canada had restrictions for 3 months and 3 days, for 93 days. On June the 14th, 2011, Japan lifted all restrictions, all of them. Have a nice day. No, don't care. We trust you. You're not going to poison Canadians, right? Because Canada's nuclear industry is a lunatic industry. That's a lunatic would do something like that. They're now in positions, very high positions of power across the country, the nuclear industry. Captured our universities, captured our medias, captured the regulators, regulatory agencies, captured key positions in the government, financial district, and the government itself. the murderers. It's a coward industry. It's a coward industry. That's what nuclear does. It's just a simple... How's our poll going tonight? Had any trolls show up tonight? Oh, we only got one. So hang on, wait for it. Our poll tonight is the hateful nuclear industry out of control. 97% of the people, yes. We got 33 likes and only 26 people on the show. Really? Can you imagine what kind of low life you got to be to get a job at Google to censor people like me? Really? Can you imagine what kind of moron you got to be to take that job? Russia and China concerned over Japan's plan to dump Fukushima radioactive water. Russia and China, really? Well, where were you when they were dumping it nonstop for the first 10 years? See, the idea of plan to dump Fukushima radioactive water, hang on. Because you got to kind of walk, otherwise you don't know who's watching. You don't know who's watching. Okay, first off, let me walk you through the water filtration system. The REVA 2014 August. For the last 3 years, the system's been unused and kept out of operation. So the first 3 years of nuclear meltdown, there was no filtration whatsoever, and there still isn't because of the same reasons in the first place. TEPCO can't bring the contaminated water issues under control. The advanced ELP system has yet to function. That's 2014 also. So the REVA and the ELP systems, water filtration system, simply never worked. The groundwater bypass operations, because they were going to pump water and direct it around the plant, that didn't work. They don't know when, if ever, it might work. TEPCO fails to deliver on a installed fence to stop the radiation from going into the ocean. This is a total fantasy, by the way, that they can put down a fence that's going to stop the radiation water from going into the ocean. And the TEPCO ice wall will not stop the groundwater from entering the crippled Fukushima Daiichi. Every time it rains, snows, there's no bottom to the wall. And the big question is, why didn't you put a real wall in? What kind of moron thought an ice wall was a good idea? What kind of idiot thought that was smart? What kind of moron are you to think that was an acceptable idea? Like, really? Well, you really got to be some super stupid to think that's going to work. The Americans flew over the country at 1,000 feet above the ground because radiation pulses 1,000 feet easily. 3,000 becquerels per square meter by flying over it. And they're only talking about iodine 20 kilometers away. Every time it rains, the whole country is washing radiation into the ocean, liberating it up into the environment. And then China's not concerned at all. Because what they're trying to do is look over here, don't look over there. Okay, so I showed you that first part. I'll show you the second part, hopefully. There we go. So in 2013, I'll put this Sorry, I'll put this on the big one when I get figured out here. Yeah, there we go. 2013 was 1,000 tanks. 2014 is 1,200 tanks. 2017 was 900 tanks. 2019 was 1,000 tanks. In 2021, 1,000 tanks. 2022, 1,000 tanks. So 2013 they had 1,000 tanks. 2022 they still got 1,000 tanks. Hanford Cleanup finally underway. That's just one of the scariest pictures imaginable right there. Believe it or not, folks, it's finally happening. The first portion of the radioactive tank waste at Hanford nuclear reservations has begun pre-treatment for safe disposal. Like the emissions from the Hanford site, the numbers are actually absurd. Again, major cover-up. It's an industry, right, born out of misery, out of wars, and it's ran the same way. And in fact, they're and they use women. Like, we got lots of headlines. How much they hated women shows you how much they hated women. Several dead as cyclone slams into Madagascar. Winds of 235 kilometers an hour, 155 miles per hour, gusting plus 200 miles per hour. The winds are terrible. I've never experienced this. People live there all their lives. This is a Fukushima effect. It's the Fukushima radioactive fallout effect, where you get so much radiation into the environment. You got all these different models to show you how this actually works. That's a plutonium model from TEPCO of radiation covering the planet. That's a Neptunium model. That's a cesium model of the 19 days later plume covering the whole planet. There's a xenon model of the radioactive plume covering the planet. And so this is pulsing energy every second at the speed of light at 186,000 miles per second pulses. And it's pure energy. And it's we're talking about is absurd. Because, like, you can put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. So how many atoms do you think they're talking about in these death plumes? These are doomsday plumes covering the entire biosphere. The city was completely underwater, so you had major storm surges. Oh yeah, we just had somebody. Somebody hit me. Oh, that's the spectrometer guy. I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see nothing on the little phone screen, unfortunately. But he's trying to, why don't you give me a call? Call into the show and tell me what you're showing me. Now, he's talking about his microscope, but I don't got my glasses, so I can't read anything. Taiwan reaffirms food safety as top priority of imported Japanese food. But the big problem is Taiwan has a history of evil, and they're trying to keep the nuclear industry under check. But it's a difficult one because they're in well-placed positions throughout the country, particularly the universities. So that's one of the first thing evil wants to take over is your universities, the Learning Institute, and start the brainwashing propaganda. And so hopefully, well, what happened after Fukushima nuclear meltdown was, it was around 2000, this came out in a story a few years ago from Taiwan, that 2,000 nuclear students from the universities, after Fukushima nuclear power plant had multiple nuclear meltdown, spent day after day, week after week, month after month, and several years spamming the internet, claiming there was no adverse effects from Fukushima nuclear meltdown. They challenged every comment section out there on every social media site from the nuclear universities. Like how do you fight something like that, see? How do you fight something like that? Yeah, hi there. Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Anyways,
I'm gonna put you on the microphone.
Okay.
Okay. So he was just texting me pictures, and go ahead.
You can put them on the air or whatever, but I have a high-power microscope. You know, I do all kinds of stuff.
Right, you've got a spectrometer, yeah.
Spectrometer testing. But what those two were was I got a swab from the COVID tests, and I put them under a microscope, you know, because there was like this big debate or whatever about what was in those swabs they cram up in your nose.
Right.
And it's clear they're metal fibers. They're actually clear-coated metal fibers. And the one thing with the oval shape in it, what that is, I don't know what kind of metal it is. I don't know. But if you look at like a Q-tip that's cotton,
right,
then, you know, it's, you know, there's a clear difference between a cotton swab that's like an organic plant and then these swabs are cramming up your head.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So...
What? And you seen little metal strips.
I got interesting.
And you seen metal strips.
Yeah.
Right, because I got reports of that from a doctor a few days ago. I put another coronavirus video up at my BitChute site on Thursday, part 4. I'm doing a recap of the original videos, and I don't want to do it on YouTube because YouTube took down my last COVID video for some reason. And so I'm doing it on another social networking site because they're actually crazy, right? The industry, the coronavirus industry, they're actually lunatics.
Well, I get around quite a bit, you know, because like every part of the economy is my customer. I could be sent anywhere at any time when my phone goes off. I don't know where I'm going.
Sure, no, that's right, yeah.
But I get a chance to talk to a lot of people in a lot of different places doing a lot of different things.
Right.
So I have a pretty good view. But one of the things they were saying about the so-called vax, I call it a bioweapon, is that you're more susceptible to cancers with this vax bioweapon.
Right, and I can get my site taken down by just having this conversation. You know that, right?
Oh man, sorry about that.
Right, that's the problem, right? I really like to know, but I already got a strike because I started talking about this, and they.
All right, I'll shut up about that then.
Yeah, no. Well, no, I'm glad you told us because like your legitimate source, and you usually do radiation numbers and extraordinary numbers.
I do a lot.
Yeah.
But, you know, those pictures, that's my microscope. So there's no, like, the same thing with the spectrometer. There's no hearsay.
No, that's right. No.
And information, that's me.
No, and it's good. And you put good thinking into what you're doing, too. You know, you go and you get certain foods, and then you're checking it legitimately with real equipment, and you repeat it over and over and over, then you can't deny it no more, right? So, like, it's
A lot, yeah.
no, we appreciate that, Garth. Yeah. Okay, listen,
right.
anything else you want to throw out there?
No, I haven't run the tests in a while. I already know it's there, but
Americium, yeah.
cesium-137.
And the americium,
You know.
yeah. You find that together all the time, which means that's a major event, right? Okay, good stuff, my friend.
The levels are different, but once you have those, that's the big picture.
That tells you the story, yeah.
You know, because they come from the same place. Split uranium atoms.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they don't exist anywhere else. They don't come from anywhere
No,
else.
they're anthropogenic, man-made for sure, right? So, and for that kind of quantity to show up, then the obvious finger is Fukushima. Okay, well.
Yeah, I hope I didn't step on a landmine.
Yeah.
About that.
Okay, my friend. God bless.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
You call anytime, okay?
Okay. All right. God bless.
Yeah. God bless.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye. And so he usually he comes up with frightening numbers with the spectrometer of stuff like tuna and canned foods. Frightening. Even just every number is always crazy numbers. And so Taiwan is very difficult for Taiwan. Now, like there is, like I say, the government is trying to close down nuclear, but the nuclear industry is in very, very powerful positions throughout the country. And I'll tell you how crazy the nuclear industry is in Taiwan. That the natives have a place called Orchard Island. So they got the natives isolated, typical, right? They hide the natives away as if they're somehow bad people. And Orchard Island is where they got them stuck to. So a number of years ago, the nuclear industry was like, we need a nuclear dump. And so where should we put it? And everybody was like, well, the natives are on Orchard Island. Let's do it at Orchard Island. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. How are we going to do it? And he said, well, let's pretend it's a canning factory where they're canning salmon and tuna and stuff like that. And we'll get the natives to give us a chunk of land. The natives, when I approached the natives on Orchard Island, Taiwan, and said, we want to set up a canning factory. Can we get a chunk of your land, blah, 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 over here? And they were like, yeah, of course you can. That's a great idea. We love it. And so they set up a nuclear dump disguised as a canning factory for seafood. That's how batshit lunatic the nuclear industry actually is. And you'll find that right around the world where they've done similar things. They didn't just dream it up on their own, see? Operating coal-fired power plants is more expensive than switching to renewables. It's a new study. Generating electricity from solar power is cheaper than doing so through coal-fired power plants. A new article published in the journal Energy and Environmental Materials states, in sunnier countries like Spain, the economic case for solar is even stronger. In India, 70% of the coal capacity is more expensive to run than building new renewables, while in Germany it's 100%. So, like, they're saying, like, and he directed people planning future nuclear supplies to consider wind nuclear, which is degenerate, and storage solutions like pumped hydro, hydrogen, and batteries. Notice how nobody mentions compressed air. Even though compressed air storage, I'll bring it up for you real quick. Compressed air storage is obsolete technology. I'll just bring you a quick picture of what compressed air storage looks like. Because compressed air storage makes more sense than pumped hydro or batteries or hydrogen or anything else. Because all you're doing is digging a big mine shaft, and extra energy you're storing it by compressing it. So you can compress a lot of energy into a single mine shaft. And there's no limit to how many mine shafts you can have, because it's easy to make the mine shafts. The technology we live in, right? It's incredibly easy to do now. In UK, can pioneer the use of heat from the seabed. So they figured out a new way to capture heat without needing huge pumps and everything. It does it automatically. Potential to provide homes with an infinite supply of heating and cooling. So that's two really important, right? You can capture the heat from seabeds, and you're not going to. There's no destruction of the seabeds when you're doing it. Apparently, it's very, very minimally invasive, and replacing coal plants with renewables is cheaper than keeping the coal plants operating. So that's two amazing stories. And then this story, the last story came out. China becomes top importer of Japanese food for the first time, but they still have it banned in 9 prefectures. To date, 14 nations and territories still maintain restrictions on Japanese exports imposed after the nuclear meltdowns. China bans food products from 9 Japanese prefectures. Nuclear activists to be constantly spied upon. So I got very few views tonight, I notice. And I've been censored heavily for a long time. But that's an abnormally small amount. 24 viewers. 37 likes on a Sunday video is abnormally small. And is the hateful nuclear industry out of control? Yes. This probably got a lot to do with the fact that this is the first time anybody's seen my nuclear merchandise shop. So even if nobody buys nothing from my merchandise shop, which they already had one buyer, just having that site there freaks them out. Save the planet from climate change. Close all nuclear power plants. If you scroll down, you'll get similar stuff. And save the whales, ban nuclear power plants. And you got multiple colors you can choose from. Black is probably not a very good one. It's probably okay though. Who cares, right? And you got all kinds of options. But what you'll find is that click on Dana, and you can kind of like click on apparel or just hover over it, and you'll get all kinds of options. And I got a lot already, but it's going to increase dramatically. I'll be taking some down and replacing it with some better versions in the future. But as you scroll down, you got to let each page see it on the bottom loading. And then you get all kinds of... I kind of like these neck masks because you can use them as a repeating face mask. Fukushima nuclear meltdowns, an extinction level event. Because you can imagine you get a few thousand of them in circulation. Fukushima, and you can get them in all these pretty colors. All kinds of nice colors for everybody. And this is like a face mask, except you can wear it all the time. If you give it a few seconds to load, you can zoom in on it at that stage. So I would imagine But I'm not like I'm going away. And we gotta, just want everybody to know there's another option out there. We still need donations, but whatever, right? If you buy one of these things, I get a small chunk of the pie. So, but I really do like that idea. What do we got done here? I can't remember. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah, so we had to create something at some point, right? So it's up there for everybody. If people are looking for another way of breaking in that conversation, there's all kinds of shirts. Lots of them got pictures on the front and back and everything. And over the next couple of weeks, I'll get a handle on... I got a big folder of stuff I want to turn into shirts. I'm trying to figure out how to import some of my graphics, because that would really be a beautiful way to do it. I can come up with some really creative stuff, and I can bring in all the green screen effects and have them printed out along with the message. I think would be we can get the conversation going. If you buy these things and sell them and send them to, because there's a lot of big YouTubers out there. They'll get their mailing address where you can send them stuff. If a few people start sending random people like that one of these, you can really get a conversation going in a hurry. Because if you go to your friends and you're wearing that or in the shop or something like that, they're going to be asking you what you talked about, right? What do you mean it's an extinction event? You say, excuse me? And because you got all these strangers are going to be reading it, and they're going to go home, and they're going to be looking up Fukushima nuclear meltdowns, extinction level event. So it's a really good way to get that conversation going, isn't it? And there's stickers where you can just stick it at work or something like that, where you can stick it on a spot where everybody's to a lot of these cliches. Okay, well, let's call it a night. I literally haven't stopped since Wednesday. We didn't do a show on Thursday night because I done a coronavirus show at 5 a.m. on Thursday morning. Because I started at around right after the show ended Wednesday night, and time I put everything together and done the show, it was I never finished till like 6:30 or something a.m. And then I wanted to go in the woods and look for species and go species hunting, because the species are all missing. We're going to end the poll and call it a night. The official tally on the poll before we end it is 37 votes, which is a really low number for the poll. 97% agree that the hateful nuclear industry is out of control. We got 41 thumbs up. And let's end the poll here, because that was fantastic. Thank you, everybody who participated. Dana Nasana says every day on the chairlift, that's all he talks about. It's awesome. James Megan says he's going to get a t-shirt eventually. P-Answer, P-Swear, thank you, everybody. Well, it's just like, even though nobody buys nothing, it's nice to have that there. The nuclear industry noticed it right away, you can be sure. Richard, James Lucid, Christmas tree lights powered by electric eels. That's hilarious. thinker says enough compressed air and politicians in Ottawa to heat all homes in Canada. John Curtis, Tree Fruit. Good night, everybody. God bless everybody. I hope you have a great night. Cough Mixture. Albert and Shayla White. Good night, everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. I got to admit, I'm pretty burnt out trying to get that site to work. The first day and a half, I had to take down everything I created. I couldn't get it figured out. I got a pretty good handle at this stage, thank goodness. Colette S. Yeah, if you leave a comment on my preambles, it might disappear after 3 or 4 hours. That's Google. Scumbag Google lobbyists got it set up that way. And hugs for you, Colette. Thank you again, by the way. Yeah, we're going to go. I notice my throat's pretty raw tonight. Ezad. Like, all I know is that we got to have this conversation every day until the world has the conversation too. Nancy. Good night, everybody. I'm just scrolling up through the names, and I'll come back down to the most recent comments in a moment here. I see Shayla got in for an hour here tonight. Darlene and Don Vincent. Yeah, we're almost at the top. There's Colette right there. Tim Norris. Yeah, Fukushima is an extinction level event. Is 100% correct. Did I get everybody? It looks like I got everybody. Yeah, hugs for you, Shayla. Thank you, honey. Okay, looks good, folks. Let's call it a night. Easy show tonight. Not go too hard. Hopefully I feel a bit better tomorrow because it was so much work. And we couldn't get in the woods because we had storm after storm after storm. And now this morning it was minus 20. And it was like all I can do to get the windshields cleaned on the truck. I was like, there's no way I'm going in the woods today. If it breaks down, I'll never get at it, or I'll freeze to death. It was bitterly cold. We got everybody. Just double checking. Yeah, looks good. Okay. That was a good show tonight. I like that. Lots of good stuff. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. And we'll see everybody tomorrow night, hopefully, or when you get around to it. The video will be there waiting for you. Take care, folks.